Hello, I'm Leroy Garcia, and this is Blue Rain Gallery Podcast. Today in our studio, we are on the main floor of the gallery with our three favorite glass artists from the Seattle area, all on the native base. You can tell that these three people are the cornerstones of a contemporary Native American glass art movement. Welcome, guys. Raven, Skyriver, Preston Singletary, and Dan Friday. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
I think what we'll do is start a little bit with the journey of contemporary native glass into the Southwest. And that's via especially Preston Singletary, who's been a great ambassador, wouldn't you guys say, for glass in general, and in the native communities. And we've interviewed all three of you, and we know a little bit about your journeys and things. Tell me about the community of glass itself in Seattle. And we can start with Preston. Tell us how the influence of working together, how glass is kind of produced by teams, how you assemble teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a community in the Northwest, and everybody knows each other, pretty well, and everybody has different skill set and people coming together. And if I want to work in a more sculptural style, there's people that will help me and learn, stuff that I've done with Raven or other folks. We just, anyway, so it's, I can't overstate, the, how important the community is and how people really just come together and work on different teams. And we're always shifting around. I mean, Dan and I both got our start at the Glass Eye Studios, production factory. And then we started going to Pilchuck, and then we were meeting a broader range of people from all over the world. And, just witnessing different sensibilities and, to the material. And so, you can adapt small things, just, maybe not copy directly, but you can use techniques and you can modify them to, create your own style and get influences and input, from all kinds of people.
What I noticed right off the bat was, visiting you the first time in Benny Moore's studio, was that teamwork. And everybody has their own styles, but they participate in producing your style per se without compromising theirs or whatever for the most part. And that's pretty cool. One of the first times, one of the few times I went to Del Chihuli's studio, Dan was one of our guides, and Dan has participated in that studio for a while, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, Dale and Leslie have been real generous, and just like Preston, like you mentioned earlier, not just the native community, but also the glass community. There's just a lot of overlap of like mentorship. I mean, I've got 100 teachers, and like traditionally in like Coast Salish or like my family of artisans, it's like a sit beside art. You don't learn it all by yourself, and you learn working at the knee of the maestro, or helping these guys out. And you add those things to your toolbox, and nobody kind of gets there by themselves. So I think that those things are really similar. It's a lot like being in a band too. Mm-hmm. Like, we show up, and Preston, he's got, like you were saying, when he comes in, you go into Ben Moore's and you see everybody's keeping the rhythm going, mm-hmm. Don't drop the thing, and we're all working on the same piece. And I kind of like that analogy.
Yeah. Part of that journey too is the inspiration of working for people who have really been accomplished. In your case, William Morris. In your case, Lino Tagliapietra. In your case, William Morris team. How was that influential to you, working with masters like that?
Hugely influential. And glass is a thing where even with some of the smallest pieces, you kind of need one extra set of hands. So it's very much teamwork oriented. And that teamwork, the word you keep hearing is community. And that's really what it builds. I grew up on an island with a very strong community of people that come together for potlucks and birthdays and weddings and funerals, and moving to the mainland and being, in a different space. I feel like I found that community in the glass community, because it's not just teamwork, it is a community. It's these people that really care for each other, and we look out for each other, and it's the same thing, you know, we break bread together, and we share in our successes and our losses, and you know, weddings and funerals and all those things. And so
Yeah, it's
it really
pretty tight.
comes from a place of care and sharing that knowledge, like these guys were saying. You know, it's we all lift each other up by sharing our techniques, and we don't have secrets in our community, I feel like, and everyone takes those techniques and applies them to their own style of artwork, and it's a beautiful thing because it really elevates the art form.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that I would like you guys to talk about each is the development of your personal styles. How'd that come about? Let's start with Preston.
Well, you know, when I first started, you know, as a glass blower making decorative vases and bowls and things, you know, the first thing that occurred to me was this sort of hat form. You know, it's upside down. It's sort of narrow at the base and it flares out wide. Flipped upside down, it's kind of like a Northwest hat. So that was the first object that I kind of started to play with, and that led to like, well, what else can I make that, you know, as a form that I can put design work on? And so I made a cylinder, and that became, you know, a totem.
A totem. Mhm.
So, you know, on and on. And so the evolution from there, you know, obviously I did sandblasting techniques, which, you know, and, you know, that came together when I was up at Pilchuck one time. There's this woman, KK Cribbs. She's a long time, you know, colleague of all of ours and good friend. And she did a lot of sandblasting. And I said, hey, KK, you know, how do you sandblast? She goes, well, here's the tape. You put it on there. You draw your design. You cut it out, and you take it into the sandblaster. It's just like,
it's not as easy as that, though.
No, it's much more nuanced, and I've taken it to a pretty, you know, taken it pretty far with, you know, wrapping the entire form with this rubber stencil. But then it was in about 2001 or, you know, or that was at 2000, 99, 2000. Then I took a workshop with Pino Signoretto, who was an Italian sculptor. And I kind of talked to him a lot about, you know, where I'd like to go with certain forms. And then, you know, the other iconic piece, I think, you know, that in relation to my work is that raven, you know, with the two deep cuts, and it's sort of like, you know, standing on the table and you put the sun in the beak. And so he coached me along with that technique. And so then I figured, okay, I can work with these bubbles that are very thick walled bubbles, and I can manipulate the shape because it's got the thickness, it will hold the form, on and on and on. So it really just kind of goes from there. And then it get more and more detailed. And then I started working with Ross Richmond, and he helped me accomplish some of these, you know, smaller detailed figures. And so he continues to work with
I was
me.
thinking about the Harlan Riano pieces.
Oh, yeah.
the taping on that and the cut out on that.
Yeah, those are really mind benders. But
Yeah.
my team always dreads like when Harlan shows up, because though, I mean, the work is beautiful, but it's so detailed, and you've got all these splice marks that you have to be concerned with, because you can't wrap the entire thing with one piece. You know, you have to piece it together.
Yeah. Oh,
You gotta
I
get
was
like
there for that blow. That was incredible.
You got to get like a dip tank or something. You know, what
I
mean?
know. I wish there was something
So
like that.
perfect, like
Tool dip.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get Dan in on this one. So, where's your inspiration? How do you develop your style?
Well, you know, I mean, it's still developing. At home, I'm still working on things, but I like Press was saying, I started making. I mean, when I found glass, I started at a factory, and it was in by proxy of just being in Seattle. It wasn't like, you know, I had kind of given up on art school, and I started working for a living and sort of a tow truck driver, car gypsy, low-level criminal. And when I saw glass blowing, I'm like, dude, that's the way out. I could be creative and work with my hands. And I was kind of ready to make vases and ornaments and shiny on-center lip wrap, you know, whatever, you know, the people you look up to. And just over years going to Pilchuck, and, you know, Aunt Fran is a member of the, you know, her son was the hereditary chief at Lummi, and she really kind of gave me this thing. She's like, they're out there doing it. You got to find your own voice. And I really started working on the sculptural work. I'd say my style I mean, I don't know that there's one thing. I do a lot of every little thing, but I really like the illumination of glass. I do a lot of clear or solid glass with a light color, so that I love how glass can kind of eat light. It's a really unique quality in the material. And again, an Italian maestro, Dino Rosine, was at Pilchuck, and he was doing this thing where he was stuffing cups the whole time, and I'm like, oh, there it is. And it's just one of those things where you you put a feather in your cap from someone else's hard work too. You're like, I knew that kind of set me down the road.
So is the first things where you found your style in your Aunt Fran's baskets?
Yeah, that was another one. I had showed up at her house, and I'm like, I've been blowing glass for 12 years. I'm like, hey, Auntie, I work for this guy, Dale Chihuly. He's amazing. She's like, who's that? And I'm like, well, he's a glass guy, big timer. And, and, well, where's your work? I'm like, well, it's hard to get in. I don't have a degree. I'm a nobody. And she's like, you don't need the degree. She's like, her work's in the Smithsonian. And she's like, I don't have any of those things. It's like, we make things with our hands. It's what we do. You need to really find your own voice. And I had just gotten sober right about then, so it really kind of rung like a bell. I'm like, yeah, what am I doing 12 years later doing this? So it was really kind of the impetus I needed to.
So how'd you come up with the bear forms and the fish forms?
Well, I got the Haytuluk Osium. I got the bear. We're a bear family. We don't have clans like they do in the Northwest Coast style, but we do have like swan family, bear family, and we have a bear family. So it's kind of a natural transition to do the bears.
To do that. Yeah.
We're fishermen, Coast Salish people, island people,
the anchors as well.
Yeah, anchors. Yeah, a lot of. I used to fish all the time, and I miss. The guys are out there right now killing it, and I catch glass fish now. I guess that's what I say.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your voice. How'd you get your voice?
Yeah, so I think the common thread is kind of like, we cut our teeth with this utilitarian more forms, or Venetian style glass, because that's really the inspiration. The studio glass movement in the United States was seeing these Italians come over with technique, because before that everyone was just kind of like banging rocks together in the woods. They didn't have any technique. It was all about self-expression, and the studio movement is a beautiful marriage of those two things, because once we realized what technique could do and teamwork could do, we moved on from there as a glass community. But so I started in a similar way, just trying to learn technique. It's all about muscle memory. So I was doing vases and bowls and stuff like that, and it wasn't until I started working with Karen Wellenbrink Johnson on Bill Morris's team that I was introduced to the sculptural approach of glass. And so that really opened my eyes. And when I first started, I just, it's really just, monkey see, monkey do. So I was just trying to emulate the techniques that I saw. And I tried to make a fish. I think I made a goldfish, was the first sculptural thing I made. And very much like you guys, it's just this slow evolution. I think you once you realize what you're capable of doing and what is possible, then you start to develop that voice. And for me, that's certainly been the case. It's a slow evolution. I build on one success and take those concepts and ideas and formulate them into what the next thing is going to be. And so I've just slowly built on that, and then as you go through that evolution, you start to find more of a voice in the narrative, and then just tying it back to my upbringing and my heritage and the native species and the surroundings where we live. And I really like to pay homage to the salmon and the killer whales, and the predicament they're in. I think a lot about those things, but a lot for me is just form study too. So I'll look at these different creatures and try to use them as a way to practice color, palette, texture, all these things that are hard to achieve and are make the making of glass very interesting. So
yeah, another question would be, what do all your contemporaries, how do they feel about you showing glass in the Southwest? Does it make sense to them? Because that movement is so hardcore in that Northwest corridor for glass.
I mean, I think I had to come down here and kind of ring the bell to like get them to like call me back up there. To be honest, I got to be, because you know you guys got such a movement going on down here. Press put together the group show at your gallery, and you know that was our first introduction, and the pieces did well. Then I came down for India Market, and I've been coming ever since. It's kind of been a great.
I was really shocked. The first show we did for you, it was your first gallery show.
Yeah,
and we did like over $100,000 in sales.
Yeah, it was crazy because I had to come here to do that. Up there, these guys won't call me back. I'm like, hey, look, I'm from here, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then they called me back. I gotcha.
I just remember, you know, how tricky it was to get a foothold. I mean, you invited me to come down and show when you were up in Taos, and you know, I brought my stuff down there and put it next to, you know, these fancy pots, and you know, there's like $20,000 pots, and my stuff was like, you know, pennies on the dollar compared.
It was
you know,
1,000 to 3,000.
I'm like, and so, you know, usually up in Seattle, you know, glass is pretty, you know, sought after. You know, they just kind of look at my stuff and like, well, yeah, pass it by, go buy some pots, you know. And then you were telling me one day, you said, I wish we could do like a demo here, you know, kind of show people how it's done. And I said, well, lo and behold, my buddy Joe Benvenuto's got a little portable studio. So we hauled it down here. And then, you know, next year or so, we put up a show and we did a demo, you know, put the first piece away, and people were like, oh, clapping. And then they sort of wander into the gallery and they're, oh, I'll take that one. I'll take that one. I'll take that one. I'll take that.
Mhm.
And it was just like, I mean, that was that. And so when I walk, you know, so after 2 years or so of like kind of going home, going, well, maybe next year will be my year. We'll see. And then that education process really, you know,
It took
really
time.
helped.
It took time.
Yeah. And so, and it really helped me get a foothold in this market, but it also put glass in the limelight down here too. So
It took us 23 years, I think, to get this going. A lot of effort, like Preston was saying, you know, the hot shops coming down here, because a lot of these people have never been to a hot shop. They have no idea how to figure out how the heck did you do that. You know?
yeah, so those early days, it was comical in a lot of ways, but you know, it really did kind of pour gasoline onto the fire. So
People still remember that.
Yep.
And stuff. Another thing I want to talk to you about is I think another part of that journey here was assimilating you into that Pueblo pottery culture. I remember the first shows that we did with Tammy. Describe that.
Yeah, you know, the way I remember it, I'd try to talk to her about it, you know, for a couple of years, because I was, you know, that technique is going to transfer perfect, you know, with my.
Well, it's the same.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing. You know, it's going to look great. And so finally, when we got around to doing it, it was like, that show like sold out in
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
And the price ranges were heavy, huh?
Yeah. And
Like
so it
20
really
to
did
40.
it was very co-supportive, because it forced, you know, the Native American collector to look at glass,
Yes.
you know, because of the strength of her work and our work together. So it was brilliant, I think. And it did solidify the whole process down here. And I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, it's good. How was it working with Preston, collaborative?
Oh, I mean, I can't say enough about working with Preston. He's just, he is, I mean, success aside, just one of the most kind, magnanimous people, and so laid back, so easygoing, and game for anything. And so it's just been such a pleasure working with him collaboratively, and just, you know, I feel like my work makes a beautiful canvas for his design work. And I feel like a lot of times you can see a collaboration as like, well, let's put your thing on my thing, and it just kind of falls flat. But I feel like the marriage of our two styles really, really mesh nicely. So I couldn't be happier with how the collaborations worked out, and I really look forward to
They're very
doing
beautiful.
more.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, those works are stunning, guys. I
Yeah.
really love them. And it's such a great, like you said, the sculpture. And I mean, Preston, you really become like a contemporary form line guy in your own, like Robert David. I mean, you just like really, you nailed that too. It's like another art form that's not
Right.
turning the pipe, you know, that
Yeah.
form line thing is
No.
no joke. So
That,
and I just
I'm-
wanted to add one more thing too. I'd say when you asked the question about, coming to the Southwest versus the Pacific Northwest. It's not that there isn't representation of Native art there, but you guys have really done a lot to like elevate Native art into the fine art world, you know, and that's kind of this crossroads of SWAIA, Blue Rain Gallery. You work with Preston, and I think that it just is an evolution. That it's not that it didn't happen anywhere, but it couldn't happen anywhere, but it happened here. And I think that that's, you know, that fine art, Native, non-gift store energy sort of thing, you know?
Yeah, and I think back to the biggest way that we got in was through that Pueblo Pottery Corridor, because it made the biggest collectors of contemporary Native art pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, and something about that too is like I talk to people sometimes and they want to think, oh, you know, we have a studio at home, or Preston has his own studio, Dan's building a studio, and they're like, oh, well, you must wake up in the middle of the night and go out there and be inspired. And it's like, you know, the joke is like, what do you think about when you make your work? And it's like, mostly my financial situation, you know? So it's a real part of the discussion is like, we would be artists, but we wouldn't be successful artists without the gallery. And, you know, we have mouths to feed, we have teams to hire, we have, you know, it's a very real aspect.
Energy costs.
Yeah. Of just making the art is, you know, so we, you know, a lot of people, when they work, they're making money, but when we work, we're spending a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, you know, it makes the world go round to have representation like this and to be, you know, here in this place.
Wonderful. So where do you see this movement going in the future? The Native contemporary glass movement.
I kind of feel, I mean, when I started traveling, you know, early in my career at about 1990 or so, I went to Japan, and I noticed that the Japanese artists, their glass artists, they had kind of a unique sensibility about the things that they made, and it reflected an Asian, you know, sensibility. And, you know, it was right at the time when I was pondering all this, you know, trying to do the Native designs and stuff. And I was kind of vacillating between both, like, oh, but when I finally committed, you know, it was about reinventing myself, you know, becoming, you know, like being a painter when I was a glass blower or whatever. I had to learn how to draw, you know, how to create the form line design. And, but so I contend that, you know, with this material of glass, that over time a sensibility will emerge around, but it takes, you know, it takes knowing the material intimately, right? Mm-hmm. And what you can do with it. So I think it's starting to grow now that we've had this, you know, exhibitions kind of showcasing, you know, what people are doing. And now it's just kind of showing an example of what can be done. And that's part of what, you know, like me collaborating with other people was sort of taking them on a high level, like showing them what could be done with the material, you know, at least from my own perspective. But, you know, you pair any of those artists up with, you know, either of these guys, it's going to be totally different, right? Mm-hmm. So now we've got this diversity of technique and concept, and then it's how, then, you know, then what you do is you're starting to think about like, well, what is contemporary Native art, and what is the, you know, the symbolism, and I don't know what's the purpose with it. Where can it go? I mean, I try to bring a lot of symbolism into the work and talk about mythology, talk about these old stories, and then now I'm starting to look towards the future. Like, well, what, you know? Okay, so Raven did XYZ. He stole the sun and the moon and the stars. He stole the water. But what's he doing today? Did he just stop doing things, right? So
he's still out there.
Yeah, he's still around us, right? And if the culture hadn't been interrupted, you know, by this colonialism, then the stories would have continued, right? You know, there was the anthropological point of view is this, you know, the culture is frozen in time, and anything that's contemporary doesn't really relate because it's, you know, it wasn't from, you know, its purest form. But it has to be allowed to evolve. So that's the way
I was talking to Russell Sanchez, who's a very famous potter from San Ildefonso. He was saying the same thing. It kind of took me off guard because a lot of the tribes culturally over here are very protective of tradition. And sometimes it does get in the way of growing or moving forward. But they have a saying in their village that's all about moving forward in life, respecting the past and the traditions, but always moving forward.
Right.
And that's important. Where do you see this art movement going, Dan?
That's a great question. I think that Raven might be playing at the Nectar Lounge in 2 weeks, right? I think that's what he said. The inside joke. But the show Clearly Indigenous that opened at MIAC, that show is another kind of, it's traveling for the next 5 years. There were 40 artists in the original opening of Natives working in glass. And there's a great portion of them, again, like Preston has really taken the lead of working with other master artists and other materials. And I think glass is one of those things that has like a high point of access. It's, it's tricky to get in. It's a material cost thing. It's an energy cost. And it's not, it takes, just like playing an instrument, it takes 5 years of banging out, someone else's music till you even start to think about your own thing. So it has such a steep ramp to entry. The collaborations that Preston has done with, our shout out to our Maori whānau in Taroa, New Zealand, and just Indigenous people around the way. It's one of those things. Again, that's just us working together. That's Native people working together, and it's it's just Native people have been so resourceful. As soon as they got metal, they made the ads. They changed the ads and carved more incredible things. As soon as the metal lids of the tobacco cans, they have the jingle dress, whatever you're working with. You say glass, the contemporary glass art movement. I would say also too, the first glass furnaces in America were in Jamestown, made to create wampum and beads for trade on the plains. And, some of those amazing beadwork that they did, that's glass art. If mosaic glass is glass art, then also I'd say that, Natives are willing to embrace whatever they have access to. And I think that's just,
broadening the spectrum.
Yeah, there's just more of an access to it now.
When I first started with Preston, there was Tony Hohola and Marvin Oliver and him.
R.I.P. Tony.
Yes.
Yeah. Marvin
and Marvin too.
All right. Yeah.
And now, like you were talking about that exhibit at MIAC. That's beautiful to see. So where do you think this future is going?
Well, I mean, I think these guys covered it pretty well, but I do think that there's, just looking around this gallery, you see how all of the artwork that is Native artwork is contemporary artwork. And you can't really look past that. Like I see these people like David Boxley and stuff that do form line design, and they're amazing, and they're following the traditional form to a T, but taking it in a completely contemporary direction. And I think that is probably true across the spectrum. You see this high caliber artwork made by Native artists that is something that people haven't ever seen before. And it's true, the beads and stuff is glass art, and that's something that was adopted early on, and we don't maybe recognize it as such, but I think that the Native glass is something that's going to continue to be seen in the future. And I'm excited for future collaborations. Working with Preston has been amazing, but I'm looking forward to doing something with Dan too. We're talking about putting something together. So I just think if you keep your eyes peeled, you're just going to see that evolution continue. And just to touch on the MIAC show again, that Letitia Chambers put together there, when that book came out, I was floored to see how many artists Preston had collaborated with. So it was really amazing to just see that influence, across the board. It's really cool. But yeah. So.
Yeah, I think Blue Rain helped put that whole thing together with her.
Yeah, you guys loaned a lot of.
Yeah, the only thing I would say that I didn't like was the historical perspective that she gave to glass, because she credited Del Chihuly and Lloyd Kivanu, which were, I guess they kind of started the line. But if I think about the journey with Preston in the 23 years, the amount of hard work and investment to do this, that's really the truth of contemporary Native glass in the Southwest. Well, we'll leave it there, guys, and thank you for coming. We'll have a good Indian market this year, and
all right,
we're on our way.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to encourage everybody to subscribe to our podcast on any of the platforms. You can also find us at blu-raygallery.com under the podcast bar in our menu. I'd like to also encourage you to visit our online store by going to blu-rayprintshop.com and bring art to your everyday life.